Hi, this is Bob Samuels, founder of TechConnectr. TechConnectr is a transparent marketplace and campaign management platform of best-of-breed account-based marketing lead generation solutions. We've partnered with Serious Decisions Summit to bring you wisdom from leading account-based marketing thought leaders. To that end, I'd like to introduce you to Christopher Antonopoulos, CEO of Measured Results Marketing. Christopher, it's a pleasure to speak with you. How are you today?
Well, Bob, I'm glad I've had the opportunity to connect before this call, and really excited to talk about ABM and data and technology today.
Outstanding. And so, if you can give our audience a little bit of your background specifically around ABM and targeted marketing and so forth.
I think I like to think of myself as part of the old guard in the technology space. So, an initial user of tools like Eloqua, HubSpot, ExactTarget, and a lot of the platforms like Salesforce, Sugar CRM, and Microsoft Dynamics. And so, my background is really how do you connect the systems together so that you've made sure that the leads are passed from the capture point all the way into a sales system and then match back to where they came from in the first place. So I've worked with Cisco Systems, Network Solutions, and now really focus on helping mid-market companies build their technology stacks.
Outstanding. So, and you've had experience both as a consultant and as a user yourself?
Yes, I think as a user myself was really the impetus to doing this. But when you work at large organizations where they've got 7 instances of Salesforce and using multiple marketing automation tools, it gives you a good context of how all those pieces work, and then it's continuing to help companies build that as a practitioner and building a team of subject matter experts to do that work.
Okay. And as we talked briefly before this interview, you mentioned it's all down to people, process, and technology.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this space is that you can have the best configuration. You can tag your key and target account and create your account tiers. And if you don't take into consideration the process of how that gets to sales or moves around your organization, nor train the individuals that are working with this data or the front line to talk to prospects or the account, it doesn't matter how good of a system you have, what data you have set up, you get stuck if you don't have the people aligned with the information that you're sending to them.
Okay. And so I imagine it all starts, this whole ABM and targeted marketing, it has to start with a lot of planning before you can actually implement anything.
Yeah, I think people overcomplicate it to start. Essentially, ABM is about choose the clients that best fit with who your organization wants to sell to, identify those organizations, and then programmatically market to them and build programs to try to engage them, understand a bit more about your solution. So it's a bit easy to start. I think where people get caught up with it is they're trying to build the perfect model to start and exactly target organizations. And so they get to a position where it's, they build out this entire map of type of organizations, industry, personas within them, and then they need to then develop content for each of them and segment their database and create all these fields with drop downs. And so, although you eventually get there, I think it's just find best fit type of companies first and start really simply, and don't get caught up in all the webinars or analytic frameworks that may not be necessary when we're just getting started.
So basically, spend some time, figure out who is your key ideal customer profile, if you will, and find those
Yeah.
companies, and then find the right people within those companies, right? Because there's probably half a dozen or a dozen right folks, depending on their personas and their angles.
Yeah, and it just depends on where you're starting. I mean, this can be as simple as going to LinkedIn, putting in a profile for revenue, geographic location, and industry, and then identifying some titles of individuals who you want to target in this company. It doesn't, that's a very manual way to do it and manual way to start, but at least it gives you the context of how you find these individuals and then get the right component pieces when you start to build this at scale and either buy data about organizations or augment stuff you already have.
Okay. And so you get your key people, your key target companies, and then you figure out, okay, so what do I got to do? So how do you reach out to them? What type of messaging do you use? Is it I imagine it's a whole story. It's a whole series of messages and different platforms and different approaches.
Yeah, it's again, it depends on size and scale of company. I mean, it's always trying to find attributes or things that person or categories of companies care about. Yeah, I think starting with an experiment, if you've never done it before, let's use LinkedIn as an example. You find a company you want to do business with, you find a title of an individual within that organization, and then you need to do a bit of research to understand, what are their pain points? Are there any articles about their company or press releases? I'm sure, Bob, you're bombarded like I am with these. I've just connected with you on LinkedIn. I have these great lists that you can buy. Contact me and I will send you 100 contacts of companies that want to buy from you right now. And so, usually if you're doing it at a small scale, it is personalizing messages based on organization to those individuals and offering to help them in a way that they care about. If it's a cybersecurity company, there's specific challenges that they have. There's quite a number of them. What area are they focused in? And so knowing a bit more is where it starts initially. If you're doing this at scale, it becomes creating a survey or using research that an audience is interested in, and then using a data source to identify industry or augment information about that company. So there's like ZoomInfo, Discover.org. There's a whole host of tools where you can collect data about these target companies and then make assumptions in terms of what their needs are and present them with things you think they may be interested in. It's not as effective as one-on-one, but it's that sort of next stage in development or building out one of these programs. I said a lot of words there. Hopefully it made sense in terms of how I walked through that process.
Sure, makes sense. Do you use intent signals type of data in the process? Finding out what they're searching at, finding out what they're reading, finding out what the social types of signals.
Yeah, I think that's the next phase of development. So it's identifying your organizations, finding the right titles, and experimenting with who is responsive to those messages. Then it's trying to find out more information in a more automated fashion about individual and company to understand what their needs and pain points are. The next part is intent. And so you have tools like Demandbase and others that have extensive ad networks, and what they try to do is look at what are individuals' behavior, what content are they absorbing, and then did they visit your website, or are they showing interest by activities in terms of needing the solution that you offer? So that's sort of that next. If you're to break this into buckets in terms of the 101, 201, 301 level, intent data is that 301 level, but you have to do those other steps first. Is it?
Fair enough.
It's harder to collect and typically more expensive when you are trying to get data about individuals' intent to purchase or behavior, not through your own channels, through a visit of your website or a download of a piece of content. Beyond that, it becomes a bit more expensive, and you have to be really sophisticated in getting it in your system, and then building rules to use that information.
Right. And just to clarify, it wouldn't be the intent of a person; it would be more of intent of a company at the domain level, not even knowing who that person is was reading that article, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's all sorts of pay-per-click type models where companies do research. So you have probably Ascent2 as an example of one where they survey industries. Demand Gen reports is another example where you've got individuals completing surveys about what their priorities are, and then that information is passed to companies and organizations to learn intent. So it's both on the company level as well as an individual who is completing a survey to get a report. So that's one example of a source. There's LinkedIn groups, a whole host of ways to figure that out. It just depends how little sleep you want to get, and does it really make a difference in targeting that company with a personalized experience so they're more likely to engage with your company.
Okay. So what have you come up across, how do you handle issues around data privacy, GDPR, CCPA coming around the bend? Have you had experience addressing those sort of challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so the answer is yes. The challenge is really, how do you initially engage with someone that you believe that you can help with your product or your solution? And I think from a GDPR perspective, it's really putting something in the market that is compelling enough for someone to respond to or opt into communications with you. A lot of webinars, online events, really that they're essentially approving your ability approving the ability for you to contact them. But it's really caused, at least in the last year and a half, a number of companies to be really careful about tagging and identifying where they met someone, how they communicated with them, and really focused on building things to engage individuals to get that permission. I think in the U.S. it's going to be a big change in terms of how companies think about marketing. I mean, at this point, as long as roughly speaking, as long as when you email someone, tell them who you are, what organization, and give them an easy ability to unsubscribe, for the most part, you can email most anyone. I think in the future, when you move to more, permission for contacting individuals, that fully changes how you market and how you target organizations, because you really have to provide value first before blasting out an email to tens of thousands of people.
Makes sense. So what does the future look like? How do you think things are heading? What are we going to be talking about in a year or 5 years from now as far as ABM or targeted marketing?
I mean, I think we're going to talk more about groups of individuals for ABM, or you'll have platforms, places where people get information that they subscribe to, that are part of a group. And so I think ABM is going to be about how do you provide information to that group and then solve specific problems in order to get permissions to communicate. I think there's a lot of talk about personalization and what level is required, but I think we're going to talk about how much better data has gotten and what programs people are using in order to get that information from individuals. I think I don't know if you've seen Google put out some news from a Chrome perspective about not allowing third-party tracking codes at some point in the future, and so you're really going to need to get information directly from individuals rather than relying on other sources to try to augment what you have. So I think it's going to be a move to one-on-one relationships with people and companies. I listened to one podcast where they said your grandparents are much better suited to market and sell than you are, and so I think we're going to continue to move to that relationship and individual correspondence as we progress in the next year.
That's back to the old school you referred to in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's picking up it's having a relationship. It's showing how you're connected. I think we talked at the very beginning about people we knew in common as a way to vet experience in a space. And I think it's going to be more and more important, and companies are going to rely on it, because in some spaces like cybersecurity, where you have a company forming, it feels like every 30 seconds, how do you differentiate and build a relationship? And a lot of it's going to be with actual communication rather than a blast of a piece of content that you hope is compelling enough for someone to open.
Yeah, well, I hear good things about handwritten notes. People don't do them anymore. They're appreciated.
Yeah, we do that. So all of our clients, we do a handwritten holiday card with a note, not just a have a good 2020. It's a note about what we've done with them and what we're excited to do with them in the next year. It takes hours and hours, but it's a great way for clients to understand you appreciate them, and it usually has them reaching out and asking about what's next, or how do you think about the coming year.
Very good. Well, I appreciate your time. Any other words of wisdom before I let you go?
No, I think it's just try. I think for ABM programs, don't overcomplicate it. Start simply and identify a few companies and research them, and then scale that process once you figure out what works.
Excellent. Christopher, I appreciate your time. Have a great day.
Great, thank you.